Savanna guided Trigger into his stall inside an elegant barn with lofty, elevated ceilings. It was built from red oak, varnished to a high polish. The walls were adorned with photos and ribbons from various contests Savanna had won. The loving, obedient steed entered without any disapproval. Once inside, Trigger leaned his head next to Savanna, who repaid the gesture. Standing beside each other, Savanna gently stroked the side of her loyal horse's face, resting her head against his head. A common sign of love for each other. As much as Savanna desired to write her own story and not live in the shadow of her family, she knew she would not be permitted to visit Trigger. Using her horse against her was cruel, so Savanna was sure her parents would do it. The stunning steed was not the colt he once was. His age was showing. He still loved his wild rides, but Savanna understood there were only so many left in him. "I thought I would find you here," said a voice behind Savanna. Savanna circled and saw her boyfriend Grant standing at the main entryway. He was a strapping blonde male. His shoulders were broad and he had a thick neck, beefy chest, and trim waistline. Grant had big ambitions of immense clout and fortune. He cultivated his profile to showcase that he was a gentleman of adventure. Grant was a state champion in lacrosse, an NCAA Division I wrestling champion, and a big game hunter. A freshman in law school, Grant was a student teacher and local chapter president of his beloved fraternity, Theta Nu Epsilon. "Hey, Grant." Savanna was polite, but did not have it in her to be warm. Grant strolled across the barn towards Savanna. His stride was wide, his arms permanently perched out to show his muscular build, chin high and eyes steely. He consistently appeared as a president getting ready to address the media. Trigger was not pleased to see Grant. He displayed his opposition by exhaling loudly out his nose and shaking his head. Savanna chuckled and told Trigger, "Be nice." "I thought you were going to send that old man to pasture," sneered Grant. Savanna glared at Grant from the corner of her eye, then smiled at Trigger. "This boy right here still has some good miles on him. Don't you, boy?" Grant looked Trigger over. "I wouldn't trust him on a polo field." Savanna responded curtly, "He would not be seen in the company of those snobs anyway, so you two agree." Grant expected a warmer welcome. "Well, sweetie, it's great to see you too," said an annoyed Grant. Savanna turned towards Grant and leaned forward for a peck. Grant reared back and put his hands up in protest. "You reek of horse." Savanna nearly acted offended, but rethought. The criticism excused her from having to be affectionate towards Grant. She shifted her attention from Trigger and walked out of the barn ahead of Grant. "What brought you here?" Grant trotted to catch up to Savanna. "You, of course." Savanna was less flattered and more curious. "What do you need?" "I have been calling all morning, but your mother and the housekeeper said they haven't seen you. I drove out, which is tough enough with everything I have going on. But if you don't call me back, then I have no choice. Next time, consider how busy I am before forcing me to drive out here." Savanna scoffed, then started talking before she knew what she was saying. "Well, excuse me, Your Majesty. I have been out in the fields and missed his royal phone call. Please beg my pardon, Your Highness." Grant's face became tight and the energy between the two turned quickly. Savanna knew she had crossed a line as the alarm went off inside her. She could feel Grant's eyes boring into her accusingly. She giggled to prove she was joking, even though her sarcasm was genuine. "What is it with you and this mood of yours lately? And say it's just me because everyone we know has noticed it too," said Grant. Savanna almost told Grant what she wanted to say. She was exhausted by his social demands. She tried to tell him she did not love him, and when he had not called for the last week, she hoped he had broken up with her, once and for all. She would die happy if she never stepped inside another country club or political fundraiser. But the words did not come out. A fight loomed on the horizon, but Savanna was not ready yet. Instead, she said nothing. Grant searched Savanna's face for some indication of an apology. She seemed like she was holding back tears. In his stunning audacity, Grant presumed she was upset at herself for talking to him disrespectfully. "I know you are upset with me for being so busy lately. I owe you time. I'm sure you have been lonely, hanging around waiting," Grant said. Savanna clenched her jaw and battled the impulse to scream. Grant led the way up the driveway and away from Savanna's home. "What are you doing tonight?" Savanna shrugged and said, "Nothing, I guess." Grant chuckled. It was a low, hearty, condescending laughter. "That was a joke. I know you're not doing anything, but good news. Now you are." The argument that Savanna was strategically waiting to have was becoming a top priority. "What if doing nothing tonight is exactly what I want to do? Don't be silly. Only losers spend Saturday night home alone. This is business and I need you. There is a party tonight for a partner at the firm. I need to be there and it helps if you are with me." The pair arrived at Grant's truck. It was oversized for what Grant needed. He struggled to control it when driving and parking, which was a nightmare. But owning a giant truck and wearing boots fit the image of an ass-kicking Texas businessman ready to battle. His boots hurt his feet, and his truck was too much for him to handle, but his image mattered more than his comfort and competence behind the wheel. Grant climbed into the cab of his massive vehicle. Savanna asked, "Have you ever considered doing something more meaningful with your education and connections?" Grant smirked at the idea. "Like what?" Savanna looked around, considering her response. "Maybe be a public defender?" Grant bellowed with condescending laughter. "Waste an Ivy League education on a bunch of people who are more suitable in jail than walking the streets and gathering welfare." Savanna was appalled at what she had heard. "What makes you think they all belong in jail?" Grant rolled his eyes. "If I argue with you now, I must bill you for my time. I will be back around 7 p.m. Wear that long black gown with the slit up the side with your hair up. I guess there's not enough time to flatten those kinky curls. Also, wear the diamond necklace I bought you for Christmas a few years back. It shows off your neckline and lets people know I care for you. I would kiss you, but you stink like a horse. Oh, and take a shower." Grant closed the door on his truck and drove up the extended driveway towards the iron gate that encircled Savanna's family mansion. His truck emitted clouds of black smoke that choked Savanna. She waved the smog away. "Damn it, Savanna. Grow up. Why didn't I break up with him?" Chapter 5. The hypothetical conversation Savanna had been running repeatedly started as a cordial parting. It turned into a shouting match, with her doing all the shouting. The most annoying factor was Grant was not there for her to scream at. The doorbell rang through the stately residence, reverberating off the oak floors and reaching the high vaulted ceilings. Savanna got up to answer the door. About damn time. Pulling open the spacious front entryway, Savanna was perplexed to see the smiling faces of Charlene and Dolly, a duo of Southern belles from good stock. Both young ladies had large, bumped-up Texas hair and were clothed to hit the town in high-cut, sparkling dresses with designer cowgirl boots. Their cleavage was on exhibition, and their long tan legs stuck out from their dresses. Savanna was acquainted with the two via the high-class social circuit, but never close with them. The partners tried to enter the home, but Savanna gently stepped before the team, blocking the threshold. The girls' smiling facades passed and conveyed confused stares. Charlene glared at Savanna. "Are you all right?" Savanna spoke flatly. "I'm fine. Why are you here?" A high-pitched screech rang from behind Savanna, startling her. The sound was her mom's exaggerated excitement at seeing the duo. The lasses drove past Savanna and welcomed her mom with gestures of affection and an outpouring of praises. The senior heiress was just as eager to flatter. "My God, girls, you look fabulous. Savanna, don't they look amazing?" The trio fed off their excitement. The praise cycle became a feeding frenzy. Having had enough, Savanna exclaimed, "Will someone please tell me what is happening?" The triad hushed. Their eyes collectively shifted towards Savanna, standing stoic, her arms crossed and visibly irritated. Dolly responded, "No need to scream, drill sergeant." Savanna's mom apologized. "Oh, don't mind Mr. Mann. She is anxious. Grant is taking her out tonight." "No, he's not. That is why we are here." Charlene clamored out the words as if they were common knowledge. "Grant sent us," explained Dolly. Savanna's mom looked at her daughter. Savanna's face was bright red, and her eyes peered down at the floor. The mother assumed her daughter must be missing Grant. He had been swamped lately, and Savanna was often alone. That was undoubtedly why Savanna had been so moody recently. "Honey, you have to understand men like Grant are very busy. It's our job to support them and be there for them." Dolly tried to clarify. "He said he already called you." "Maybe you missed his call." Savanna kept looking down and shaking her head. "He never called." Charlene stepped in to explain further. "He probably forgot, but the lead partner and the firm's daughter is in town from school. As a favor, Grant offered to escort her to the party." Savanna's mom attempted to soothe the Barb. "That is a genius move. That can get Grant a lot of points in the future." Dolly was twirling her hair and keen to turn the knife to see the look on Savanna's face. "That is why he sent us. He said he did not want you just lingering around your house all night." She was amused at having a front row seat to the drama developing. Savanna's mom gushed as if Savanna had been gifted with a puppy. "Ah, how sweet. See, honey, he is thinking about you." Savanna looked up to the ceiling, rolled her eyes, and uttered, "Regular Prince Charming." There was an uneasy stillness. Savanna was disappointed that she could not break up with Grant that evening. Instead, he was the one blowing her off again. She was breaking up with him, even if she had to hunt him. But that was all right. She would go out tonight and do what she wanted. She would track Grant down tomorrow in his office at his precious frat house. Savanna snatched her car keys from a bowl beside the front door and strode outside, past Charlene and Dolly, who were struggling to keep up in their boots. They started to rethink hitting the town with Savanna after all. Chapter 6. This was it. Brandon could feel it in his gut. This was the pinpoint where his rotten-ass, worthless, cursed luck took a turn for the better. But it was going to take some help from his childhood buddy Jackson, a young black man who stood over 6 feet tall but whose frame was so narrow he looked like a substantial draft could snap him in half. Jackson wore baggy flannels in a hopeless endeavor to look larger than he was. The mates were enjoying a night out at their favorite dive bar, a large single-room structure set on a gravel lot out in the deepest parts of the outskirts of town. The bar was sarcastically named Our Country Club. Jackson and Brandon played a high-stakes game of pool while drinking beers. Their opponents were Ash and the fourth wheel in their social circle, Rose, a short, vivacious Hispanic girl with wide eyes, thick lips, and a vibrant smile. Depending on the day and their moods, she was either Jackson's darling, loyal girlfriend, a simple bedmate used in times of desperate need, or arch-enemy. Never merely friends, it was all love, most times animalistic lust, and occasionally pure hatred. But it was always extreme. The foursome had been locked in their pool game for nearly an hour. It had come down to Jackson dropping an 8-ball corner pocket shot. With that clear achievement, the boys would not only have bragging rights for the night, but the girls would be paying for the next round of drinks. Brandon eyed his partner, aligning his cue stick for the winning shot, then brought his eyes up from the table to Ash. He wanted to read her face, the dread in her eyes, knowing she was about to lose. But instead of any indications of anxiety, Brandon noticed shenanigans. Ash was up to something. The smile on her face said it all. She was about to lose, and she was smiling. Something was not right here. Ash shouted across the table to her partner, "Rose, is that a new bra you're wearing?" Standing directly in Jackson's eyeline was Rose, wearing a pearl snap shirt that was a full size too small and unbuttoned halfway to the top. The curvy girl looked like she was burst free from the blouse at any moment. Jackson's vision shifted from the cue ball and up toward Rose. Brandon noticed the subtle gesture and tried to move his friend's focus. "Come on, Jackson, don't let them get to you." Jackson jiggled his head around, trying to jolt the idea of Rose's bra out of his skull. He relined his shot and drew his cue stick back, but Rose replied, "Actually, it is new. It really forces the girls to the top, but it may be too small. Can you tell?" Rose started to strike poses, putting her ample chest on display. Brandon was now yelling at Jackson, "Do not look up. Whatever you do, don't look up." Ash thought this was just too easy. She squinted like she was struggling to see what Rose was talking about. "Lean forward under the light so I can see better." Rose did as requested, thrusting her chest forward under a lamp that swung overhead. Brandon slapped his forehead and screamed, "Damn it, Jackson, just take the freaking shot." Jackson focused on the task and took the shot, but the Q-tip slid off the top of the ball, missing direct contact. Brandon knew they had lost. He observed as the 8-ball glanced off the corner and rolled to the table's center. Brandon sank into his chair, disappointed but not shocked. His head lilted back and he proclaimed, "Ever since Eve tempted Adam, women have been nothing but a damn curse." Ash and Rose celebrated with hugs and cheers. Jackson danced around the table, his arms opened wide. He blurted out, "Good game, now group hug." The duo of celebratory girls cheerfully welcomed Jackson with an embrace. Brandon could not believe his eyes. "You, Benedict Arnold, you disgust me. You're worse than Benedict Arnold. You're Fredo." Jackson shoved a hand into his pocket and yanked out a crinkled $20 bill that he tossed onto the middle of the pool table. "Go buy these champions around, Brandon." Brandon covered his face and screamed into his hands. Rose said while hugging Jackson, "Stop being a sore loser, Brandon. Get me a beer." Brandon tossed his cue stick down onto the table and nabbed the money. He swaggered onto the overcrowded barroom floor. Ash watched and decided to join Brandon in fetching drinks for the group. She maneuvered after her dejected friend and touched his shoulder from behind. Ash had to yell to be heard over the boisterous crowd and blaring music from the stage. "Hey, it could be worse. Jackson is forgetful. Play it right. You may be able to trick him into buying the next round, too." Brandon and Ash reached the bar and wedged in beside the other patrons. It was not as loud here, and they did not have to shout as much. "It's not the money. It's losing. I've been on an endless losing streak lately. Freaking can't kick this shit luck," said Brandon. Ash smiled and tapped Brandon on the forehead. "It's all up here. You didn't lose that game. Jackson's ding-dong lost that game." Brandon smirked with his $1,000,000 grin. "I literally lost my shirt last night." Ash replied, "I won't lie. You are one of the worst poker players ever, but that game they run in the back of the asylum is rigged. You're just dumb enough to play." "You called me a loser this morning," said Brandon, still grinning. Ash shook her head no. "I meant you set yourself up to lose. You are trying to convince me now that you are on a losing streak you can't control. That shows it is all in your head." Brandon sighed and thought it over. "I still want to win that game they run in the back of the asylum." Ash rolled her eyes. "Hopeless. That is what you are. Now, order me a beer." The bartender was a pretty brunette girl who wore a football jersey tied at the side and cut-off shorts. She strolled past Brandon even though he was tipping across the bar with his money out so she could see. Brandon adjusted and attempted again, shouting, "A bucket of beer, please." The bartender rushed by once more, not taking any notice of Brandon. Ash knew the cause of the silent treatment, and she was using it as an occasion to teach Brandon a lesson. You should have answered her phone calls, instead of ignoring her like she was a bill collector. Bad decisions, not bad luck. Brandon turned towards Ash. "Thanks for the advice. Do you want to try and order the beers?" Leaning back away from the bar, Brandon felt himself bump into what felt like a wall. He rotated around to see a massive tank of a man standing over him. Brandon squandered no time apologizing. "Sorry, sir, didn't mean to bump into you." The enormous man was not about to let Brandon off that easy. "You made me spill my beer." Brandon examined the bottle the man was carrying. There was no indication of any spillage, but he knew what the man was after. "Like I said, I'm sorry." The bully stepped forward, pinning Brandon against the bar. The oversized man's breath stank, and his stomach stuck out so far that it pressed against Brandon. "I don't like your looks, punk." Brandon glanced to Ash for help. The man tormenting Brandon was 3 times her weight and more than a foot taller. All she had for Brandon was a shrug. Brandon surveyed his surroundings, searching for some kind of equalizer. There was a giant beer stein that Brandon could smash into this buffoon's jaw, but it was just out of reach. He required equal footing. "Well, how about we settle this outside, thick and chunky?" shouted Brandon. Now all eyes were on the confrontation that was brewing. The large man held his threatening gaze, but was near giddy inside at the prospect of violence. "What did you say, punk?" Brandon was hollering and making a scene. "I said haul that fat gut of yours outside, dump truck, so I can beat your ass in front of everyone." Brandon felt the weight of the man come off of him. It was a freeing sensation. The man pointed toward the bar's front door and said, "Let's go, punk." Brandon yelled back, "Lead the way, Dairy Queen." A heckler near the altercation yelled, "Fight outside! Let's go!" The bully swung around and charged towards the door like a stampeding bull. The rambunctious drunken masses followed. Brandon was right behind him as well. Then he slowed down. Half the bar's patrons were on their way out the door, with Brandon letting them pass. His pace came to a grinding halt feet away from the exit. Brandon was lost in the crowd. Everyone interested in the potential of savagery was moving outdoors. Brandon was safely inside. Standing alone, he turned back to the bar towards awaiting Ash. "Bad decisions, you say?" Brandon strutted around beside Ash. Ash fought back the urge to smile at Brandon. "You made my point. If you decided to go out there, you would have had your ass kicked. No matter how much Muay Thai you may know, the talking bear out there just needed one punch and you are eating out of a straw. That would have been a loss. You decided to walk away. That is a good decision." Brandon leaned over the bar, money in hand. He said, "I'm wild, reckless, and sometimes dumb, but I'm not suicidal." Most of the customers were outside. It was just him and Ash standing at the bar. The bartender now had no option but to take Brandon's order. "Bucket of beer, please," Brandon said with a shit-eating grin. On the next episode of Straight to Video Books, Savanna drove her car onto a gravel parking lot set deep in the countryside of Lockhart. Old pickup trucks and muscle cars filled most of the lot, with motorcycles lining the parking spots up front. Ahead on the horizon was a single-story red-painted building with a neon sign that read, "Our Country Club." Dolly sat in the back seat, her face blended with paranoia and fear. She leaned forward toward the driver's side and questioned, "What kind of hillbilly bullshit is this, Savanna?" Straight to Video Books is a product of Creekbed Media. It is taken from the novel Born to Lose, Live to Win by Jeremy Campbell. You can purchase Born to Lose, Live to Win on Amazon and Audible. Please remember to like and subscribe. More episodes are coming soon.